Hello, listeners, and welcome to Godrej and Voices podcast, Be All You Can. I am Ratul Mazumdar from Godrej Interior. In my work life spanning nearly 35 years, I have tried my best to balance stressful work life with a lot of adventures that I have kept on doing all these years. I have been driven by wanderlust that has taken me to remote corners of the earth, and I'm glad to be your host for this episode. Today, we have with us someone whose innate urge to go off the beaten path has taken him around the world, finding a variety of challenges on the way and surpassing them all. He has zipped through the manufacturing workflow with as much aplomb as he has done on his outdoor adventures. Let's hear from Mr. Zurvan Marolia. Zurvan and I go back a long way to the last millennium, in fact. All these years, we have planned many a trips, but mainly on paper, except that one short, sweet little trip we had together in Nagaland. I remember that fondly. Do you, Zurvan?
Yes, I do. Thanks. Morning, everybody. Thank you, Ratul. Couldn't have asked for a better host for the podcast, for the interview. My pleasure. Now that you talk of Zuko Valley, I remember it very fondly. The plan that we had of where we were going to stay, where we were pushed into because those tribals arrived.
That's right.
And
The dead animal on their shoulder.
Yes. And the fresh meat that they fed us next morning.
Right.
And dislocating my shoulder on the way back.
Yes. Yes.
So that was one hell of an experience with zero network and no electricity to charge our mobiles either.
And a brewing storm throughout the night.
Oh yes. And you remember that small boy who was on the run from somewhere
in the middle of the night.
In the middle of the night, he knocked over there and we took him in and we gave him a place to stay.
That's right.
That was some experience.
So welcome, Zurvan. Thank you very much for joining us for this episode. Zurvan, I'm seeing an increasing number of Indians taking to the outdoors and talking a lot about it. When I talk to them, I find their inspirations are different. It varies from, the beckon of the blue sky, the fragrance of raindrops falling on the ground, on the parched ground, to going for remote places, real bad roads, to culture, to food, to meeting new people. On the other end, to the lure of having 1,000 likes on their Facebook page. So inspirations are many, and they mean different things to different people. I would start, Zurvan, by asking what had been your inspirations?
Now that you put it that way, I'm just thinking back, and I don't think I had any such fancy ideas. If you ask me in just one sentence, I wanted to just break free from the routine stresses, as you rightly put it when you spoke in the beginning. In fact, I remember the first time that I did something like this, and this is as a student. We were sitting on a Sunday morning in the hostel in engineering days, watching. There used to be this program, something with Sunil Gavaskar, some cricket program on Sunday mornings on TV, on Doordarshan in those days. And this one of my juniors comes up to me and he says, my dad's bought me a scooter. I don't know how to ride, but I want to bring it. And we were in Baroda, mind you. And, can you help me? And I said, yeah, what help do you want? He says, can you ride it to Baroda for me? I said, yeah, sure. When? He's like, when would be suitable? I said, we can leave right now. There's a 1:30 train to Bombay and we'll be back tomorrow. Next day was a holiday for some reason. And we did exactly that. We, at 10:30 in the morning, we took a decision. We just, went to our rooms. I had a spare helmet. So I told him, I said, you pack this, I'll pack that. And not even a change of underclothes. and we, and when we reached his place at 10:30 in the night in Sion, his sister had a gaping look on her face. What, are you guys mad? And next morning, 5 o'clock, we were, on our way back to Baroda on the scooter. And I might add, it was the monsoons, which we hadn't taken into account because Gujarat had a drought. So we never really factored in the rains. We had the wettest possible journey from here up to Vapi, from Bombay to Vapi. And after that, we could have had blisters. It was hot and, skin cracked. We took 13 hours to do that 440 kilometers. And people thought we were mad. But that was the first time. So in a way, then I guess it was the wanderlust as well. And then that was the beginning of, quite a few, first within the country, driven to Mount Abu, driven to Pondicherry, driven to Ooty from Bombay. And those days there were no expressways and highways. The first time that we did Ooty, we had to go through Bombay to Pune through the ghats. So, reaching Pune was past lunchtime. And then by the time we got to Belgaum, we said, all right, we'll spend the night here. And then the next day we'll go to Bangalore. And the third day we'll reach Ooty. And I don't know whether you remember Sarosh Elavia from Plant 12.
Yes.
So this was with Sarosh. We were in his
Oh,
jeep.
I see.
And on the way back, we had a brake failure on the Ooty Bangalore stretch.
Okay.
So we had to take a break over there and get the brakes fixed.
People talk about off-roading experience these days. You and I talk about even so-called good roads, Indian roads during those days, also giving us off-roading experience. People can't imagine those things anymore.
So right.
Actually, by talking about your scooter experience, you preempt the next question that I was going to ask, which is how it all began. And you have just answered that question. My next question would be, how did this wanderlust carry you forward to where you are today? I know your fascination with German, so pardon my saying wanderlust, because in German you would say Wanderlust.
Wanderlust.
So where did you carry you till today?
So you've done a lot of driving on the border roads and stuff, and those BRO signs that you get.
Yes.
So one that stands out for me, which says, travel is still the most intense form of learning. And so often it is traveling and people you meet and experiences you get, which really gives you a very, very varied and different outlook on life, on things. If you want to try and draw a connect between where it has taken me professionally, it would be very difficult. But in so many subtle ways, it's changed me as a person. And, you get to know about different cultures. You learn how to, talk to different people. It's very difficult to say how it has got me to where I am, but it has certainly, each time that I'm back, it has fueled me with a different kind of energy.
That's right. You summarized it so well by saying that it changed you as a person. I don't think any more words are needed beyond this, because this explains it all. And anybody who has had such experiences in their life would also sum up their experiences by saying the same words as you said. Beautifully put, Zurvan. Let's talk about your most memorable expedition, the one that you reminisce the most. We want a little more detail, and you can ramble.
It's difficult to pinpoint one of them, but maybe with a little bit of difficulty, I can try and, in fact, now I can think of three, each one popping up saying, why not me? Why not me? Why not me? The first one I'd like to talk about, and I'm going to take the liberty of talking about more than one, was the first time that we drove outside the country. Or not the first time that we drove outside the country. Technically, I had driven in France as early as 1995 as well. But that was very different circumstances because, it was more of a necessity. We were more people than fit into one car, and they didn't have somebody to drive. And it was a very short drive, so I won't talk much about it. In fact, if you must know, I had Mr. Khambata sitting next to me, with his spicy, language, which I can't repeat on a podcast, saying, what will I tell your family if something goes wrong? So, he says, do you know, or do you, Akkal check nahi, how can you do something like this? But one of the most fond ones, as I said, was the first time that we hired a car in Iceland in 2018. It had two new experiences for me. One was left-hand drive, and now 3,000 kilometers right around the periphery of Iceland. And the second was...
So you took one round trip around the country.
Full round trip, including the northeast, which has some fascinating places, which is, again, off the beaten path. There is an island called Flatty over there, okay, which has a population of 8 people.
Oh.
Okay. And there is a guy who we were fortunate to see, an old guy with a big beard and an orange cap. And he's even featured on a couple of international magazines as the old man of Flatty. So those were the kind of places that we did. And on the same trip, We also touched the northernmost point of Iceland, which is a small village called Raufarhofen. At the northernmost tip of that, we were standing 3 kilometers away from the Arctic Circle. That place had about, I remember, about 12 or 13 houses in the village, or maybe a little more. They had a school with 16 children.
Oh,
16 children. But a proper school building. Proper school building.
looking at the population size, all in that village must have been either a student or a teacher or a school inspector.
Absolutely. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And the most fascinating thing on that trip, and this is something I learned over there, security. I didn't see a policeman anywhere. Not a single policeman, security check, nothing. You could leave €100 note on the road. If the wind didn't blow it away, it would be lying there. Doors were never locked. Doors were never locked in those houses. I had an experience over there, and I'm rambling now, on this ferry. It was a roll-on, roll-off, like we now have over here as well between Bombay and Mandwa. On that ferry, okay, first thing I need to put into perspective, this lovely large island country has a population of 320,000, which is probably a little less than Vikhroli. So,
they put together a football team for the last FIFA World Cup.
Yes. And we saw the World Cup finals with them.
Oh, I see.
Sitting in a cafe. And that was a most delightful experience. But I digress from the drive. We stopped at a petrol pump to fill, and this was going on. We stopped to have a beer and a burger, and we then just sat there and watched the whole match with them. On this ferry, I forgot my bag, and I didn't realize it. We drove off, and there was a shipwreck that was still maintained over there. That's when I wanted to take some photographs. And I leaned across and I realized that I had forgotten my backpack, which had all my money, my camera. We had our passports with us. That was the only good thing. Yeah. Passports and phones with us. And I panicked. And I rang up the boat operators on the mainland. And they said, sorry, sir, we can't help you at this time because the boat is already on its way back. And that takes about 2 hours, or was it 3 hours? It was about 12:30. And she said, I'll get back to you around 3 o'clock. Well, I tried to relax a little bit, continue driving, realized that I was out of I had planned to go to a particular cliff from where to watch the puffins, which are very, well-known birds over there. But honestly, my mood had sunk and fuel looks a little low. I don't want to push it. I checked, closest fuel station, and it was taking me off the course by about 20 kilometers. So I said, to hell with the puffins, to hell with the cliffs. I'm going to fill fuel. So we went and filled fuel. It was a Sunday. There was a Formula One, and my passion for Formula One as well. So we sat and watched the whole race over there. So local time, you're in Europe time zone. So in those days, the race used to be 2 to 4 in the afternoon. So 2 to 4, we sat. 3 o'clock again, I rang up that lady. I said, any news on my bag? She says, this is where she gave me the reassurance. She says, no, sir, but let me assure you, nothing ever gets lost here. Wow.
What a great assurance.
That's a reassurance. 15 minutes later, she calls me back. She said, yes, sir, we found your bag. You'll get it at the jetty at 6 o'clock. Fine. Now we are relaxed. We've got fuel. We go to the cliff.
You went back to the mountain.
I've got time to kill now. We come back to the pier at 6 o'clock. It's quite cold, though it's summer. We sit in a little cafeteria across from the pier, order a hot soup, and the boat comes in. Wife sits over there in the cafe. I run down to the pier. No questions asked. I said, I've left my bag. Yes, sir, here it is. Come back to the cafe. Now, this is where I'm sorry to say, but our Indian psyche comes in. My wife asked me, did you check whether everything is inside? Okay. I said, sweetheart, the way they are, I don't have the heart to check in front of them. Everything was untouched. Then I ring up my host who's expecting me at 7 o'clock in another part of I'm sorry, I can't get the names right. She tells me, she says, there are a lot of beautiful sights on the way. There's plenty of daylight. Don't rush. I'll leave the key under the doormat for you. So 6 o'clock, we start doing what we had planned at 12:31 in the afternoon. And we reach her place after 1 o'clock.
Oh my God.
Take the key, open the car door. Open the house, settle down, go to sleep. Next morning, we get up. There's a freshly baked sourdough bread on the table for us with a note. Hope you've had a restful night. Then they helped us set up. It was a French guy married to a local lady. They helped us set up a visit to a place called Hornstade. which was an island again further to the northwest. That island is completely uninhabited. There's a family who runs a cafe there. They go with the first boat in the morning, operate it, and they come back with the last boat in the night. And they give us the most, delicious. Well, I like any cuisine, specifically, without the spices. If it's just, the meats and the garlic and salt, pepper, and what have you, I enjoyed myself. And we walked around. There used to be a whaling station there. But after whaling was banned, now that island is uninhabited. So we got back from there. Then we went on to Akureyri and then to this place, Rauferhofen, which I visited. On the way back, there was a place where we had a puncture. That was another experience. I lost my cap over there, my golf cap, my favorite golf cap. But fortunately, I bought another one in Reykjavik a week later, which I still treasure. So, and then, it was one of those cases where the spare wheel was a steel wheel. The others were alloy, so you can't exceed 80 kilometers per hour. But that night was another most amazing night. It was an Icelandic lady married to a Britisher. We got to their place at about 9:30 in the night. And we had the most amazing chats till 3 in the morning. And they shared their beer, they shared their snacks, this, that, and the other. His name was Kevin. Okay. And he said, he says, you're not tourists, you're travelers. And that is something that has stayed with us over the years. So now whenever we stop at a place and we see something and we just sit and we observe, we say, hey, that's lovely. And we say, we've just had a Kevin moment. Okay.
Yeah.
Or maybe he was an architect by profession, but he has done the exhibition of natural, So there's this exhibition a little closer to Reykjavik. He has actually put that up where you can go and experience an earthquake, experience a volcanic explosion.
Oh, I see.
So he's played a major role in that. So he told us you must visit that place. So anyway, we had a lovely evening there. Next day was a Saturday. Why I remember this, I'll tell you. I had to get the puncture repaired. And we were very cool. Like Saturday is not a holiday, right? I mean, puncture repair, though, we called up only to find that they would repair punctures till 1 o'clock. If you did not make the 1 o'clock time, they would repair it for you on an urgent basis, which was 20 times the normal cost. They didn't want to do it. As it is, the damn thing was costing me, I don't remember now, but I'd calculated almost 2,000-3,000.
Yes, I understand. In Iceland, even normal things are abnormal for us.
$2,000-3,000 to get the damn thing repaired. And the emergency was like crazy amounts. So anyway, I rushed like a madman, driving well over 80 with that damn Langada wheel that I had. Managed to get it done. To hell with it, I got the tire repaired. And the other thing in Iceland, by the way, is they're bloody serious about their speeding limits. If you're caught speeding, the fine is €1,000. 1,000 euro. Okay. And one of the hosts told us, says, just be careful about, not running over any sheep, because if you're caught doing that, it's like, that's one. Second thing, by the way, they're very particular about, don't take your car off the road onto the mud where they have moss. Because Iceland
is basically so careful about their nature.
Yeah. Iceland is basically a volcanic island. They say this moss has taken a couple of thousand years to be what it is today. If you damage that, you're damaging our legacy.
Yes.
So they give you hard shoulders where you can get off the road for some time if you want to stop for a break or take a photograph or something. But God help you if you drive off the road onto the earth.
I see.
And that was the first time that I saw these, these faces, illuminated faces. If you're at the speed limit, it's a green with a smile. And if you're over speeding, it turns red and has a frown.
Right.
The first few times I saw it, I only waved at it and went on. Then later on, I realized, what the hell, I'm in deep trouble if I'm caught or photographed doing this.
Yeah, because the overspeeding fine would have been more than the 20 times your tire fixing job.
More than what I paid for the car for the whole 2 weeks. I mean, I was praying when I returned the car that they close the account and say, all right, everything's settled. Thank you. Right. At least I know there's no fines.
Right. So I'm sure, Zurvan, you'll agree with me when I say that these unexpected things happening in such trips are the ones which make them so very exciting.
Memorable.
Compare them to the ones people go out on whistle-stop tours of Europe or any other place, a church in the morning, a museum by the evening, and the castle by the night. Compare that with these experiences. What a hell and heaven difference these days this is.
I can't handle traveling in groups.
I understand.
I
I
can't.
fully agree with you, and I'm with you on that. Zaman, my next question would
I
be,
would just say that, in
yeah,
Iceland,
well,
sitting
sure,
there at
sure.
one spot, we sat there for about an hour or two and saw two buses, three buses come, go, prrr, you've got 10 minutes, go look around, come back, take photographs, and then the next. Can't handle that.
Yeah, right. I agree with you. I'm very curious to know, Zurvan, for this trip, how do you prepare? How do you gather information? Or do you do some amount of preparation and leave the rest to play by ear? Or is it a mixture of both? Or how is it?
I I wish my wife were by my side when I answer this question because she's going to kick me under the table. She is the one who does all the homework. She will start, she will start way in advance. I mean, I will sow the seed and she will start working on it. And I will literally get in at the last week, 10 days max, to actually then plot the route. All right, this point to this point, we'll stay here. This is how long we're going to take to drive. This is where, we can stop for lunch. That detailing happens at the last minute, at the last week or so. But by then, she's done so much work. If you look at our bookshelf at home, you'll find a collection of lonely planets of places where we've been and places where we want to go. She just orders them and starts studying them. But we've done one trip where we went totally unplanned. And we went unplanned because something went wrong and we didn't have our documentation in place. We were to go to Greenland. And that was just a year ago, a little less than a year ago for my 60th. And we were not allowed to take the flight. We lost money. That's another story. We got some refunds. We didn't get everything. And we were sitting there at Copenhagen airport at 9 in the morning. What do we do? I said, the obvious thing, hire a car. Let's go. So we went totally unplanned. And Copenhagen has the most beautiful system for car hire. They have this large hall, which is like a plant that we would have over here with an office where every possible car hiring agency has a counter. You just go from counter to counter, get your best deal and pick up the car. And they'll tell you this car is parked in so-and-so slot. Here's the key. I also remember that I was 3 days short of my 60th and my driving license was to expire on that day. So I was honest enough to tell that guy, I said, look, this is my problem. This is my license, but I have applied for renewal and I took out a pauti in Marathi. He said, okay, sir, please carry on. Anyway, so we picked up a car from Denmark, from Copenhagen, and we drove right through Sweden, up into the north of Norway, and all the way down back.
Oh,
Without any bookings, without any. Okay, we had originally planned to do that. So we had some idea of what we wanted to
some
do.
idea.
No booking. For example, in Oslo, okay, it was 7 in the evening, again, summertime, 24 hours daylight. And we stopped for fuel, wondering where to spend the night. And then we see, okay, there's a Radisson hotel here. Let's check in. Norway has a lovely chain called Scandic Hotels. So we just did a Scandic wherever we went.
So in this trip, you must have done a lot of this hop on, hop off ferry services.
Yes.
Crossing straits.
Yes.
Because I remember having gone from Copenhagen to a place called Malmo in Sweden.
Malmo is just one bridge where you get into Sweden.
That's right.
So Malmo, you have to pay in Norwegian currency. Sweden and Norway, they accept a card called, or not a card, it's this called the ePass 24. So I had registered myself for the ePass 24, stating that I am driving so-and-so car from this day to this day. So all the tolls, you don't stop for tolls there are the overhead cameras, will get charged to your credit card. For Malmo, we paid the toll at the airport in Copenhagen. On the return, fortunately, I had a Norwegian. No, I didn't have Norwegian cash. But I had to pay separately. The e-pass did not do. For the rest of them, including the ferries, the reason I'm including the ferries, you just have to drive on and go park your car on the ferry. So ferries used to become our bio breaks because everywhere else you had to pay. So those are things you have to do. You have to plan yourself out. So we would go park the car and go stand in line to use the washroom.
So all these Scandinavian trips of yours must have been in the summer, which means you got a lot of daylight.
Yes.
And you could drive easily till about midnight when the sun just grazed the horizon.
Ratul, there's a disadvantage to that. Can you beat it? There is one disadvantage. You don't realize you keep driving. Suddenly you say, I'm hungry. Let's stop for a bite. Everything is closed.
Everything is closed. Yes. I can realize that.
It's happened. Yeah. So we've done this unplanned trip as well, where we drove the North Atlantic route. So from Oslo, then we went on to one most fascinating bridge, which is like on a curve. It's in one of the James Bond
I've
movies.
seen photographs of that. Yes.
That's the one. Christensen.
Okay.
We drove up to Christensen, and there's one more place I'm trying to get the name of, which has an airport, because at one point of time we did think of that, but we didn't finally do it. So we drove up to Christensen, and then we took these series of bridges. This bridge is called the Storstein Sundbrua. So I wouldn't even a Norwegian would kill us for that. So we drove all the way to that Christensen in the north, and then we started coming down. We drove part of this. We drove the bridges and stuff, and we stopped for the night at Molde. Molde was another beautiful little town with this Scandic hotel that we stayed, which was in the shape of a sail.
Oh, beautiful.
And we were on the 13th floor overlooking the fjord.
Oh.
And sunset was at 11:45 in the night, and sunrise was at 2:30 in the morning. No, from there to Bergen is where we had to take those 3 ferries. And we were, again, the Indian psyche about what time is the ferry? Will I reach on time? Where do I book the ticket? Nothing. Just drive on because your e-pass covers everything. Yeah, you were talking
I
about...
know, in Scandinavian countries, summer solstice happens to be a great event. I mean, that's the day when the sun barely goes down the horizon. And it's almost 24 hours of daylight, and they revel, and in preparation for the upcoming dark days when the opposite is going to happen. So I've seen that happening in Finland when I happened to be there on the summer solstice day. It was a great event.
Yeah.
About your company, Zurvan, who would you choose? Of course, I know that many of your trips you have done with your wife, and having told me that it's your wife who does most of the preparatory work, I'm sure she's the best company. But other than that, if there are people who get interested in traveling with you, who would be the likely companions for you? Who would you choose from a group of people?
You would be one of them.
I
understand. But I would actually say that I would still prefer that we do it together, but do it in separate cars. The idea is that, actually being at the wheel also makes the difference. It's part of the experience.
True.
But I mean, so I wouldn't like, 4 people to be crammed in a car and, each one looking longingly at the wheel. I would rather be in separate cars. But yeah. And, I have done 2 trips within the country. One in your area, which I can talk about, which is also one that, I would list as one of my favorite, which is to Tawang.
Yes.
And Bumla. So, but those have been done with groups of 4 cars. So we move in a convoy. We've done this in the Zanskar Valley in Ladakh, which was a very nice trip too. But there we were not allowed to use our radios.
Oh, I see.
In fact, it was a stupid mistake on part of one person who let his radio be seen, and then they were confiscated. Oh. And no, it was a whole process we had to go through. We got them back. But on the trip, we didn't have them as a result. We had to get them back at Rohtang on our way back, and we got it. But when we did Tawang, we had our radios and they were very useful. So we would maintain radio contact. We had a very simple rule. This is the sequence in which you will drive. And as long as you can see the guy in front of you and in your rear view, you can see the guy behind you, you're fine.
That's right.
Somebody goes out of sight, you give an indication that, look, slow down, somebody's lagging. And because of our experience and our familiarity with the leader, though people would change in between, we were the designated sweepers. That means we were the last car. So we had to make sure that everybody's in line.
Right.
So I would sort of report from the back, convoy intact. Yeah, that is how I would like to do it. Again, I'm not saying all the company was fun. So it's important to have like-minded people who want to do it for the Wanderlust, and people who are being quite comfortable being uncomfortable.
Yes. That's you put it very right. So you've done a lot of Europe, and you have done the remotest parts of Europe, which is Scandinavia, and you have done remote parts of India. What are the things on your mind for the next trip? What are the various options?
New Zealand is on my bucket list. For some reason, we had to put it off from this year. Otherwise, she would have been working hard on the itineraries by now. And when I told her about this, she says, yeah, what has happened? You're only talking, you're not doing. So I've got to be a little careful of that. Another one that we are keen on is doing something into Myanmar, something in Nepal, likely soon something into the not unexplored, but the untouristy parts of Kashmir. So, but that is going to be more of high pass challenges. So
I would like to suggest Africa for you, because Africa, I'm an Africa specialist now. I've been there at least a dozen times by now, and I've driven almost every time there. And experiences in southern parts of Africa about roads, about people, and of course about the landscapes are fascinating. In my last trip to Namibia, I came across a Belgian couple, husband, wife, and two children, all under the age of 6, being homeschooled. They had started in a caravan from the coast of Morocco, driven down the western coast, round the southernmost tip of Africa, up the eastern coast, right up to the Horn of Africa in Ethiopia, where they would give the car away and fly back home. 6 months, all in a car. We came across the couple in a very remote river canyon in Namibia, and they were sharing the experience with us. And the experience was fascinating, which I can bear out because I've done a part of it myself.
But how, firstly, I heard Africa is quite expensive. Is it?
No, Africa is not expensive.
Okay, I thought it was. It's perhaps only the flights are then.
Flights are in the sense that
they're not serviced that much.
The sectorial flights from one town in Africa to another town in Africa, that costs you a lot. Because many of these places, they don't get enough passengers. All these flights also get cancelled, and they're certainly always quite expensive.
And the second question I had is on safety and security.
Safety and security in certain parts of Western Africa, Ghana and certain other places are difficult. Central part of Africa, like Democratic Republic of Congo and Rwanda and Uganda, certain places are not safe. But I'm talking about doing the coastal belt, which is all very safe.
So two things. One is it's the cold that I'm always pushing for. So which is why somehow I have never moved towards the east as much, the Vietnams. And we've done Thailand. We used a two-wheeler there, incidentally.
Oh.
But it's not called me as much. I always sort of push for the colder climes. And the second point you made is something that's on our bucket list, is to hire a camper.
Yeah, right.
And to do at least some part in a camper. Maybe New Zealand, we will decide to hire a camper.
Yes. So, Zurvan, a lot of Indians are doing this, not to the extent that you have done, perhaps, but many are opening up to this. They are tired of tour agent organized trips, those whistle-stop trips where you get to see everything for not more than 10 minutes, etc. They're coming out of that. I'm sure more information on the net, better technology, maybe economic liberation of a certain class of Indians are facilitating these people to come out of this. But what do you have as an advice to such people? I'm asking this particularly because I have seen certain people throwing caution to the wind and doing it on a very on a scale which they have not planned for, and then getting into trouble. Not good drivers, but taking to the wheels and meeting with accidents. So a lot of people do it not with a lot of preparation, just for the heck of it. A lot of young people make these mistakes. What advice do you have for such people who are open but still not ready?
No, I'm surprised you say that. Honestly, I find that many people whom we have spoken to listen with awe to what we've done, but at the same time, feel that no, it's too risky. I'd just like to sort of put a small aside here. When we got back from the Leh trip, and I must, before we close, also share on how we planned for that one in particular. We got back, and then my brother-in-law at the dinner table after we got back, we finished off in Chandigarh and handed the car over there. And he says, now that it's done, it was a pretty mad thing you did. But, and then he sort of went on to asking us about the experiences. But his first thought was, this was mad. The point I'm taking is a lot of people look at it with awe, but say, I don't think we would do it. So I'm surprised you're saying that. But having said that, if what you're saying, and I accept that too, I would say do it gradually. First, get used to driving long hours. And when I say driving long hours, I would also share one pact which my wife and I have. We don't drive for more than 3 hours at a stretch, and we switch. The second thing is you need to know each other's strengths very much. So you can't just, let go and say I'll do it without the necessary partners and stuff of that sort. Second thing is the preparation for the weather. One thing that we certainly do every time is we read all the there'll be certain
Weather
notes for
bulletins.
drivers. No, weather bulletin apart, there'll be certain notes for drivers. I'll give you another example here. In Iceland, it was very clear. There are going to be narrow bridges. There are no signaling lights, but you can see the other end. Make it a point to stop. Make sure that the other guy is not moving. If he
Right.
moves, let him move. You don't budge. If you're moving, he will wait. And at the end, you thank him for it. Small courtesies. So these are the kind of things I would say one needs to read up. There are always nuances and subtleties to the places. In order to remain safe, understand your limits. It takes time to get used to a new place. Don't sort of jump into it and think that you've done it before and therefore everything is fine. Take your time, observe, and gradually get into the flow. And particularly when you're driving in a completely new place, a new country, different side of the road, never believe that you've got it all, because you haven't. Respect the locals is another very big thing. And this was something which was drilled into us by the team leader in Ladakh. He says, respect the locals. If the guy is driving slow, there must be a reason. Don't, be overconfident or over anything.
That's
So
a
these
very
are the,
valuable advice.
and be very observant.
Zurvan, I've seen in high season in places like Ladakh or Spiti Valley or even Northeast India, where I have been to, during high season, the number of cars that are trying to reach that place, self-driven, tourist operator-driven, is so high that the traffic jams in those remote places. Everybody trying to outdo the other, honking, dust, throwing all caution to the wind, no respect for the locals, as you just said.
That's the sad part.
That's a sad part. And you know that in India, tourism is highly unregulated. In spite of so many mistakes that you have had, all our hill stations looking like dingy towns, we have reduced them to, we are still not learning. So what do you think we must do? Should there be a restriction in the number of cars that can reach a place on a certain
Yes.
day?
Yes.
Or there should be heavy fines for people breaking rules? What do you have in mind to control?
People breaking rules, people just littering. I'm sorry, I'm coming to littering. It has nothing to do with driving, but it's basic civic sense. I call Kardungla the world's highest traffic jam. I was most disappointed to reach Kardungla and find that absolutely horrible and dangerous too, because in those heights with low oxygen, you shouldn't be there for that long unless you're
That's right.
really.
That's right.
There should be regulation. I totally agree. There should be a restriction on number of vehicles. Because, for example, where we went just now to Bumla, crossing the Sela Pass and then Tawang and then on to Bumla, there were no vehicles when we went because it's off season. The snow was very heavy. Incidentally, I suffered there because of the fact that my Thar, I had a third generation Thar with the electronic systems. And even after putting it into four wheel, the front wheels were not engaging. So I had with chains I could drive, but I wasn't getting the traction to climb.
So who put the chains for you? Did the army do it? Army?
No. We were carrying chains. We were fully prepared. We were fully prepared with that.
Okay.
Why I'm saying this is when we came down to the place where we had lunch, they were telling us that right now there are hardly anybody here, but in a couple of months' time, you won't get a room here. So as you put it, there'll be traffic jams there. That is why one of the things we do is we also pick off-season times, because that's when we can face. I mean, we love those, weather and those kind of, I wouldn't call it hardships, but experiences. But I wouldn't like to go there at a time when there's a jam. But yes, there should be regulation. There are inland passes. There is regulation, but it needs to be stricter.
Zurvan, you talked about transformation. There had been many subtle ways in which these experiences have changed you. I understand not everything can be explained in words. A lot of them are ineffable. But there are listeners who are also aspiring to having experiences the way you have. So can you explain a little more that Zurvan, who started these adventures or hadn't started these adventures, Zurvan at that point of time and what Zurvan is today after having crossed so many milestones? What changes have you seen occurring in yourself?
I think it makes a difference in one's leadership styles, the way in which one learns how to look at situations. I gave you one example where I said, you need to understand how to observe, how to understand what are the different strengths that people bring to the group, to your team, and how to encourage those, and how to use that for the betterment of the team. And then how to also share and cross learn, because you learn that everything is not going to go your way. You have to be able to constantly change the direction of your sail in order to, get the wind to work for you. So I think that's what it teaches you, a lot of flexibility in management.
Anything about nature, Zurvan? Respect towards nature, which
of
we
course.
hardly realize having settled down in cities, and when we are exposed to nature on these trips.
Totally.
How does that change you?
Oh, respect for nature. If you ask me, it's more than respect. Today, I fear the way that we are going. When I look at the fact that the way temperatures are rising, I mean, we talk of global warming so casually, but when you look at what's happened over the years, and how we are responsible, and how probably we are responsible even driving long distances, for other than work. I mean, let's face it, we are doing that. But point I'm making is the rampant disrespect for nature, I would still say at the average population level, is still lip service. It's scary. If people can still throw a wrapper of chips or a wrapper of biscuits or those huge number of PET bottles of soft drinks and as a group, sometimes when we are traveling and we see this, we stop and pick it up and carry it to our place of, where we're going to stay. And we actually, I'm not kidding, but it started with that group leader of ours actually carrying an empty sack for that. And then, we would keep putting things into it. And so it's scary. But at the same time, you realize that if you have changed, maybe you can get the next person to change. There can be a percolation of
that's right. I fully agree with you. We have started seeing these changes happen in real time. I have been to Kanchenjunga trek twice in my life. Once during my early college days, and once 4 years back. And at the 17,000 feet base camp where I was standing last time, 4 years back, and compared to what I saw maybe 25 years back when I went there as a college boy, the amount of snow on the mountain slopes is so vastly different. The glaciers have all receded. So many glaciers have just melted away. And you see a lot of brown exposed at such a high altitude. Terrible. And you see that happening in your own lifetime. And you then realize, what have we done to our planet?
It's scary. I mean, each time that I personally look at this, I really fear. And we are doing it more and more. We don't realize what, I mean, when I say we as a population en masse, we don't seem to realize it. And I don't know what it's going to take to realize it.
That's right.
But talking about it is the only thing that we can do, and practicing what we preach.
One last quick question, Zurvan. You have occupied the highest echelons of manufacturing in our company. That's a very stressful life. I can fully understand. How did you manage all this? Of course, passion for this was also a huge urge in you, but that also needed some amount of balancing. I think many of our listeners would be keen to learn this from you, that balancing, that tightrope walking act that you always managed to do.
I think, as I said, one was, of course, patience and flexibility. And the moment you start thinking flexible, it becomes a little less stressful. And along with that was the ability to spend that little time in the day, mostly in the beginning, call it what you want, but being with myself, whether it was in the form of a little time, silent time in prayer, or a little bit of just reflection, meditation, just that little time every day. That was one. And the flexibility. I think treating the team as colleagues and not as somebody whom you had to go after made them come back and made them so enjoy it. And the positivity then sort of starts growing on itself. So I think I don't look at the last 10 years at that level, not only for Interior, but company-wide as head of the manufacturing council as well. I think it was the most rewarding experience and the most rewarding time of you talked of 35 years, I did 36 years. So, and I would just like to talk a little bit about, I was lucky to celebrate Losar with
I see. That's
when we were in Tawang. And this was when we had come down to the Sangti Valley.
Uh-huh.
That was Losar. And early in the morning, these guys would be on the road dancing, with their groups and out with their beer bottles and smearing atta flour on each other's
Right, right,
faces.
right.
When you talk of weather, I realize, how much their lives are also undergoing change because of it.
That's
You can see it. So there is that sense of responsibility that we have because we are doing things which can be done differently. We have to be able to spread that message
right.
because we have a responsibility a lot more than we realize.
That's great, Zurvan. I think your last answer has enriched me also. I'm sure it has done the same to the listeners. Thank you very much, Zurvan. Thank you for inspiring our colleagues with not just your work, but also your life's experience.
Thank you, Ratul, and thank you, Godrej. Ratul, I couldn't have had a better person interviewing. And thank you, Godrej, for all the opportunities that have made these experiences possible.
So, with that, dear listeners, thank you once again for tuning in to yet another episode of Be All You Can. We would love to have your suggestions on guests for the show. Please do drop a mail on corpcom, spelt as CORPCOMM, corpcom @godrej.com, with a story you would like us to feature and why. Till next time, stay inspired, follow your purpose, dream big, and truly be all you can.